Welcome to the second episode of Grieving Heartbeats. We are parents of Urgent, who we sadly lost due to hospital negligence during labour. And today we wanted to explore the topic of secondary loss and grief coasters.
Yep, obviously there's so many different types of secondary losses. There's financial, there's confidence, there's identity, there's trust, trust of, for us, I guess, hospitals and healthcare professionals,
Absolutely.
but, people around you. But I think one of the hardest secondary losses is usually people. And unfortunately, everybody goes through it. It happens. Some people fall off almost immediately, which is very sad. And some people gradually fall off, which is just as devastating. And obviously, we've been unfortunate enough to lose people along the way as well. And it hurts quite deeply. So I think it's an important one for everyone. I know everyone's going to resonate with this one because absolutely everybody goes through it. So
and interestingly, anytime I've spoken about it before, there's a lot of people that haven't actually considered secondary loss or don't know what secondary loss is. In that sense. So I think it would be a really good one topic to explore.
It's a big topic, and I don't think people understand how painful it really is and how much harder it makes grief. Because I guess all your focus then turns away from your healing, and it goes into, I'm being treated like this by this person, and this person disappeared. Where are you? And your whole focus kind of turns, and it just delays your healing, doesn't it? So
absolutely. I think a good place to start with this one, an interesting one, is right at the hospital. I put myself back in the hospital when we were going through that period. After just having lost Ojan. And I think your mind was already kind of looking towards that, right? At that time, I didn't know what secondary loss was in the sense as we understand it now. I was still very much to go on that whole journey, but I think you were already kind of there and you were anticipating things to come. I mean,
it was really sad because I was watching you go home, and obviously people coming to your parents' home and visiting you, and you were on the phone, you were messaging people. And I didn't say it to you at the time, but I was just thinking, there is going to be at least one family member who ghosts this guy, and at least one really good friend who goes ghosting this guy. And I was thinking, I wonder who it will be. But it's going to happen. And I didn't tell you or talk about it to you. I let you talk to whoever you were talking to. I let you go and visit who you were visiting, because it's something I guess you have to learn on your own. I can't be that negative person who's like, Rick, what are you doing? You're going to be ghosted.
Of course you can't. I mean, and you have to imagine if you had taken that stance initially, and we either we weren't on sync or we weren't thinking the same kind of way. If you start to explore that idea, it's actually quite detrimental to start coming out with that opinion. First of all, when I haven't had a chance to go through it myself or understand it or go through the process, I could have turned around and blamed you for that, or said that you may have directed how I kind of navigated that process.
I shot my gun from your shoulder type thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which I can't, yeah.
I mean, I had to go through that process myself, and this is where I always kind of say, where going through an experience like that was such a traumatic grief, especially as in losing a child as well. It's the day where you lose all of your innocence. And again, you wouldn't understand that until later, but you do. The world as you know it will never be the same again. That kind of innocence I had, that fleeting kind of innocence is gone, right?
Because and I hope you don't mind me saying it's because you've had that kind of childhood and upbringing and life actually where you've not seen grief at all. You come from a very, very close family. There's like 140 of you all together, and you're all probably super close. And I don't think you guys have experienced, well, not all of you, but you haven't experienced grief and any kind of long-term illnesses or anything else in your life. Whereas I come from a family where my parents lost a daughter to long-term illness. My mum went through long-term illness. I lost my ba when I was about 20. So I've seen all of this, and I saw how my parents are treated very, very early on, and that's what I mean when I said I knew what was coming with you. Because I've seen people fall off already. I know people kind of ghost or go all awkward when there's a death, especially of a young child or a baby. And how people fall off when there's even long-term illnesses in the family.
Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of more prepared. And I didn't have my guard up or anything. I was just curious. I was just wondering, who is it going to be? And I had a little bit of a hunch on what was coming. I knew one person that was definitely going to fall off, and they did, which is very sad. But I knew that was going to happen. I knew there was one specific person I was thinking, they're not even going to bother messaging me. And again, that's what happened. And was I still sad about it? Of course, because it still hurts. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, you know, these people fell off and it didn't affect me at all. It deeply affected me.
Yeah.
There's people out there who probably don't even know they've affected me.
Absolutely.
That deeply.
Yeah,
they probably think, well, I don't know if I was close enough. And it's like, yes, you were. You were part of my life then, and you're not now. Yeah. Then it hurts because I've noticed you edge away from us.
Yeah.
And it's painful. And they're probably just getting on with their life. Like, well, I probably don't affect them. I remember actually I called this person after 2 months and I was like, where are you? Like, why have you not messaged? You've not asked about him. You've not asked about his funeral, anything. And he was like, and they were kind of just like, well, I didn't know it was a big deal. I didn't know you were even thinking about it. And it's like...
And it's interesting, right? Because when you look back and you feel like, surely these people may have been affected. Like we're busy thinking about it from our perspective and what we would kind of typically do in certain scenarios. But thinking back, you always feel like surely this person has been impacted by it, or they must be thinking about it, or it's going to have affected them a certain way.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe not. So sometimes it's actually it becomes us focused on that kind of idea that someone must be thinking a certain way. And it's just, it's not. In some cases, someone is just carrying on with their life as if they normally would.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here analysing and doing these kind of things. And it touches into something that I'll leave for later. But it's just interesting when you look back and you think, did it actually affect this person in that way?
Yeah. Because it would affect you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And,
if this happened to your family member or
Definitely.
friend, it would affect you. And this is where... I remember talking about this with you at the time, because the people who weren't really there, I feel like they were almost doomed, because the people who were there, I mean, they set the bar high.
Oh, wow.
Right? The people who were supportive.
The people who are supportive, some of the things that they've done.
Insanely supportive.
Incredible.
And I mean, it affected them so deeply. I mean, I have a very close friend of mine who I consider a brother, and he's not the one who told me this, but his dad actually told my parents. But he had to go home from work.
Yeah.
They own a couple of shops, and he had to shut his shop and go home because he was that upset. I had friends who had to go home from work. We have, I mean, my friend Cav, who I've known since I was about 12, 13, she had her medical exams at the time and she didn't do them because she was there at the hospital with me.
I remember.
She took out 2 weeks of her life.
And not just for you, she was there for
She was there for you,
right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, she was there at the hospital every single day.
Without fail.
And then when we went back home, she was there every day as well. She was making sure I was having my medication.
Yep.
She was, she was helping in every way she could. And, she had a very close family wedding at the time as well. And she made it work though. She was there for us so much. And, I have to mention this actually, because I think it was such a good idea. It's one of your cousins who, he waited for you every single day at a restaurant. That's and right. he messaged you and said, I'm going to be here for 2 hours at this time every single day. If you feel like a chat, just come and I'm here to talk. And I think that's incredible.
He did every day until I took him up on the offer and we went and we had a conversation. I mean the people who turned up, they did some incredible things, and that's the thing, that there's a lot of people that did some great things.
But also, people didn't need to do grand things either.
It's not about grand gestures. It's about showing up and turning up, and that could be in different ways. It doesn't mean either you need to physically be there.
No.
We've talked about this in length about people trying to reach out and messaging. At that time, when someone's going through this level of grief and not really understanding the world themselves, you're not looking for a particular type of message. That's not what you're after. You're just looking for that hand to be there. You're just looking for that person to be in the picture. And a simple message saying, and the one or two people that did say, I really don't know what to say. I'm here. And that's enough. At that point, that's enough to not make us think this person doesn't care or they're not there. It's as simple as a message like that that has been so helpful.
Or guys, don't worry about replying, but I'm thinking of you.
We had that. And there were a select few that would message every single day with the same message. And that's someone who's thinking it's not about bombarding that person with messages. If you read it, it just says, I'm here, I'm thinking of you. Just reach out when you're ready. But they kept sending that message. And because it could have taken me months. Me personally, it could have taken me months before I respond to that person. I don't know. It could have been the day after. That's up to me. But the message was there every single day to show that we're here. And I think that's something that's really important, because that's something that's the first thing to get lost. It's that initial communication. People get so
scared.
People get
scared. Because it's a baby.
Because it's a baby, definitely.
And that's understandable.
It is understandable.
I get it, but the people who came fearlessly, that was beautiful. I was just thinking, do you remember when your cousin, you sent pictures out of Origin to people, and I remember when your cousin Amit messaged and was like, oh my God, like, look at his hair. It's like he was born and needed a haircut. And they turned it into something really, really nice, actually.
Absolutely.
And I loved that. I loved that they were looking at him, analysing and just being like, oh my God, he looks like Rick. Oh my God, look at his beautiful hair. And Babi was incredible as well with all that, wasn't she? She was just like, oh my God, he hasn't got alien baby syndrome at all. Like, how have, like, he's so beautiful. And she just, she made it really comfortable.
She did,
And I love that. And that's, I mean, again, your brother and Babi, I know we touched on this last episode, but I was really blown away by our friends generally, because everybody, when we had this loss, we were only, 30?
Yeah.
That's very young. And the fact that all these people stepped up and knew what to do, I admire them so much. But I think the fact your Babi and your brother just nailed it and were really there. I mean, they set the bar really high, and I didn't expect that level of, you wouldn't think people just know how to nail it and just be there to be supportive. I mean, I remember my mum saying, they're literally doing what parents would do. This is incredible. Like,
absolutely. And partially that's kind of what makes it difficult as well, because when you've got, although it be a subset of examples, when you've got examples of how much people can do, it becomes really difficult to then get your head around the people that aren't doing anything. And this is where I think this topic gets really misconstrued, because I've always said, and I still always say, nothing comes from a place of hate. It doesn't. No. Nothing is born from hate, right? I mean, this we experienced this and we went through this trauma, and it's not because someone hated us that they either ghosted or they didn't respond. I mean,
if it comes from hate, someone's got to do some real self-reflection, because
completely
that
agree.
is evil. Yeah.
Completely agree.
But yeah, it's from fear and confusion.
Yeah.
And not knowing what to do, or how, you not feeling close enough to say something.
Yeah, exactly. And weirdly enough, some of those relationships, that there would have been people there that I was seeing on a weekly basis, like, either once a week or twice a week, getting together. Like, you share your life together. You're not either, like, if it was family, you're either not just family, you're friends, and it's that whole kind of discussion. So it's, when something like this happens, how does it just break down? Like, how does it just break apart immediately? I mean, that there were a lot of people that just didn't get in touch for up to like 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Right. And again, thinking back and analyzing, it doesn't come from hate, but it's to try and put the message out there that when people are going through something like this, what are the things that you should do? And it doesn't take a lot, right? So it's in order to kind of help someone navigate this experience, and it goes back to that quote that I mentioned on the last one, where if I'm in the mud, that don't don't I can't remember the quote exactly, but if I just want to sit in the mud sometimes, like don't try and fix me, just sit in the mud with me.
Yes.
It comes down to that basically, and it's like, how do you help me navigate this while still keeping intact what we had? And and I think I know that's something that we're going to talk about, but it's just, how does that break down? And I'm trying to understand why that breaks down and why it has to break down. It doesn't. I'm still the same person. I've experienced this trauma. That wasn't my fault. That wasn't your fault. That was life, right? That happened. I'm now on a new journey to kind of understand this. And whilst you're going through that initial grief journey, whilst you're going through the initial stages of your grief journey and trying to understand this, that's the key time where I feel like a lot of people disappear. And it's because of fear, it's because of awkwardness, it's someone that you know and know so well that you don't know what to say to them. And it's to reassure people that just say, first of all, what's on your mind. Just turn up, and that could be not saying anything at all and just sitting with someone.
Sitting and listening.
Just sitting and listening, or asking that person what they need. That's the level of support that it needs to be at that time. It doesn't mean that someone needs to have all the answers and therefore it's too awkward. No,
because you don't have the answers.
I don't have the answers.
Nobody is going to have the answers. You can't cure somebody out of grief. You're not going to cure it. You just got to be a shoulder. A lot of people were calling us and being like, come on, you need to be happy again, get yourself together. And, they were almost cheering us on out of grief. And it's like, you cannot cheer me out of grief. Absolutely. I've lost my child.
Yep.
This grief, and it's more healing when someone understands and accepts that this is forever. And I know that sounds really horrible, but how can it not be forever? It's your child. Right. Yeah. You will never ever get over the death of your child. It's not possible. They weren't meant to go before you.
Yeah.
The end.
But it's not black and white, is it? It's not just because we've been through this trauma. There won't be days where we can be happy again. I mean, that I almost feel sometimes like that's just how people see it, as if, and I don't mean in a bad way.
They want to rush us out of it. Like
they either want to rush you out of it, but not either actually. They do want to rush you out of it because that's the natural thing. Exactly. Like how is the quickest way, or what's the quickest way that you can find happiness? So they definitely want to rush you out of it because they feel like that's part of the natural order, and that's helping someone. Don't be negative, don't be sad, don't be upset. Kind of find your happiness, it's okay. But then on the other hand, I almost feel like a lot of the time people see you as tainted. So it's like, how do you do both? Like, how can you address that, make someone happy and say, don't cry today, don't be upset today, don't be triggered today. Don't react this way. It's always don't do this, but do this. Like, what makes you happy? You should be happy. You should forget about these kind of things and don't feel like this. A part of being happy, or a part of us getting to a state of being able to have a day where we're happy, especially that early on, before, like, unlike now where we can navigate it a lot better, in those early days when you don't understand anything, and you're trying, obviously, to get to a point where you can be happy. One of the questions I asked very early on was, when am I going to see my wife smile again? It's not like I didn't have those same thoughts, but it wasn't like me saying this is going to be negative forever. It's just, you don't know how to control your emotions at that point. It wasn't necessarily being angry or this or that. You're just in a state where you don't know what to do. Nothing makes sense. Life doesn't make sense. You've just been dumped with this trauma, which should be a really joyous occasion, and us taking our baby home, taking Urgent home, and now suddenly we've got to deal with him, first of all, not being here. Like that, I don't know. It's just the onset of so many things, but it's not happy or negative in that sense for a long time. So someone coming along to try and say, I need to make you happy, go through that journey with us, right? Let us tell you what moments are still going to make us happy.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to be sad forever. We're not going to be angry forever. We're not going to be depressed forever.
Yeah.
But are we allowed to be depressed in that moment? I think that warrants a yes. I mean, depression is a state of mind. It doesn't mean you need to be in that zone every single day. There are people that can help. But you have to identify what can help you yourself and kind of convey that for people. And how can they do that without showing up and just either being silent or asking you what do you need and letting you go through that journey? Whereas the initial point was I feel like people sometimes are very quick to just disappear because it's the easy thing to do, but not because they don't want to do anything. They're either too fearful or they're too awkward, or it's a very sensitive topic. We've been brought up for generations. This has been such a taboo and a stigma.
Yeah.
How do you break it, right?
Yeah. So, you know, on that topic, I think what bothered me the most and still does is how I feel like we're both very approachable people, and I feel like we've both made it very easy. We've made it easy to talk about Arjun. For one, we've plastered it all over social media from day dot, right? And we've 100%. Kind of said, we want to talk about him. These are the do's and don'ts. And we've made it quite open. If his birthday's been there or any other key dates, we've spoke about it. So,
absolutely.
And not only that, the people, and, you know, every single person who went awkward on us or ghosted or argued with us, because that's happened too, we approached everybody. Yep. Very kindly and said, let's talk about this. Like, are you okay? Like, you haven't reached out.
Yep.
What's going on? And we've had a conversation with everybody. And I watched you for months talking to people, calling them. And I'm thinking of two very specific people at this moment in time. You reached out. You went to see them. You went to see them. Mm-hmm. You called them several times and had really nice conversations with them, actually.
Yeah.
And they kind of didn't even meet you halfway, which bothers me. And these two people that I'm thinking of at the moment as well, I reached out to them.
Yep.
And I said, you know, and there were more people I reached out, you know, and I said, Rick really needs you. Because I remember it got to around January, February time. So this was a good 6 months after. And you really started to struggle because I think people think that the initial month or whatever, the lead up to his funeral was the hardest. No, you're still in shock. You're upset, but it's the shock. And the real intense pain tends to start afterwards.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was your point. That period after Christmas, you know, January, February time, and you were really struggling. And I saw that, and it was really hurting me because your people, the people you considered your best friends and your day-to-day people had disappeared.
Yeah.
And I remember messaging one of these people around October time, and I was just like, I think it's time you reach out to Rick. And I got a really sarcastic reply back, which I just thought, oh my God, they're not in the mental space to even, you know, so let's leave that alone. But then I reached out again in January because I saw how much you were struggling. And I sent a bit of an essay and was just explaining how, listen, you know, he needs you. He's really struggling. And again, I got no reply. And he didn't even bother actually reaching out to you anyway.
No.
And I reached out to the second person as well several times, and I was just being ignored. And I remember messaging one of your other friends who was kind of there, like maybe not enough, but it was kind of there. I remember saying, Rick's really struggling. He really is struggling. He needs help. He needs someone to talk to. And his response was, he's fine. He's a strong guy. I've just told you he's struggling. I'm watching him struggle, and you're...
Strong guys struggle.
You're telling me without seeing him, without knowing anything, because that's what you want. That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want him to be fine.
Yeah.
You want him to be strong, and yeah, no doubt you're a strong guy. And I definitely say that now because you really pulled yourself out because you didn't have these people to support you.
Yeah.
But he kind of made up his own mind that you're fine, even though I was telling him you're not.
Yeah.
And it was just really, it was very irritating to talk to these people who were just kind of making up our minds for us.
Yeah, well, and the funny part about that is that was my friends, but your friends were not only just checking in on you, and your friends were calling me. You know, I'd be out on my walks and I'd get calls from your friends saying, how are you? And it wasn't even to ask about you, because they were speaking to you separately about
and
that.
I'm so glad about that, because
they were incredible. They would call me and they'll ask me how am I doing, how am I feeling, what's going on. They were turning up when even those kind of friends that had disappeared from me weren't. And it's
So let me ask one thing, actually. Do you think this is a generational issue, or a gender issue, or a life experience issue? Like, why are people holding back? Why are they scared? Because I think, because what I mean by that is, I feel like the females in our life were a little bit more forward with being supportive. There were a lot of guys who were supportive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, I'd say especially your older cousins. In the family, they were very supportive, and they weren't scared to approach you and talk about it. But then I don't think it's an age thing either, because two of your nephews who are, how old would they have been in the time? Like late teens.
It would have been late teens.
Late teens. Yeah. They still message you and me. Teens, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Arjun's birthday.
They constantly message.
Your brother's kids are, they were all below 10, and even they would mention Arjun. So
they did. How amazing. I mean,
is that a testament to the upbringing and their parents? And
I think it is, and I think a lot of what we're trying to do now is to kind of help normalize this, right? And
they've normalized
in that
it for
respect.
Their kids.
I would say that's where we touch on the generational part of it.
Yeah.
Me personally, I still think there's a lot of stigma and taboo attached to the generational issues that come from dealing with these kind of traumas. You're very much told to kind of suck it up and get on with it. From a generational point of view, again, from my personal view, that's what they did, right? And so again, there's no right or wrong. It's just that's the way that they were taught to do it. That's how they did it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of distilled down to our level. And it's only us that are saying that's a stigma that we need to break down. For them, that was normal. Whereas now we know it's not. Like, there's still so many people that are uncomfortable about talking about these topics. That's what we need to kind of normalize and make it known that it's okay to hurt, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel weak sometimes. How do you build yourself up if you can't be transparent about your weaknesses?
Why do you think they shy away from baby loss specifically? Do you think it's because deep down somewhere they know how devastating it is? Or is it because they actually don't think it's significant at all? It's hard to think which they feel.
It is really hard.
Because I think naturally, we're wired to not think about our baby dying.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not that, anyone else passing away makes it a bit easier. But, I think there's a natural order, and certain people are going to pass away in your life, and you can't grow new grandparents, you can't grow new parents, siblings, but people find it easy to say just have another one.
That's absolutely true.
That's a bit of, I feel like people use just have another one as a bit of a comfort blanket, like here, let's just say this, and that should make you feel better because you can have another one. It's easier to put yourself in the shoes of a griever when they have lost a grandparent or a parent or a partner, because it resonates a lot more easily.
It resonates, and I guess
because we all know we're going to lose these people potentially, or at some point you're definitely going to lose your grandparents and parents.
And it's that mindset of this is general order in that sense. Like, it is the natural order, not general. Sorry, but it's expected, like you're saying. That's something that's going to happen. People know, so you're almost kind of prepped when you hear it, and that's probably
you're ready for it. Somewhere deep down inside, you're ready.
I think that's
you've
true.
Thought about it. Whereas when the moment you get pregnant, you've imagined that child to be in your life till the day you die.
Yeah,
they're going to be there forever. So they're torn away from that future. That's why it's so devastating, because how can we be so happy? How can we have just imagined this entire future and they're being taken away?
It's all the moments that you imagine that someone else isn't going to, and again, that's not necessarily coming from a bad place, but no one's going to sit there and imagine all those moments that you are in that time. And it's kind of, you know, I had a friend of mine who kind of was definitely supportive, in to the best that they could be, but you know they would still ask questions. They did still ask the question, like, how long do you think this is going to go on for? And I had to have those conversations, and a part of me being like, here and wanting to, why are you still sad?
When does it stop?
You know, and this is a close friend, so I'll say it in this way. But at the time, I felt that was just obnoxiously wrong, right? And I can't just go around having those conversations with everyone. But because they were really close, still being supportive. It's not like they disappeared; they were there, anyhow or any way that they needed to be. But they still had those questions. Then you get people who disappear, and you know that the mentality is.
I think some people did the culturally right thing, which is
a lot of people
go round to the Biswanuls and send initial condolences, or just sit, and that was full stop at that point, because I mean, there's again, without naming any names, you know, there were specific people who I'm thinking of right now who came round to your parents' house, sat, but didn't say a word.
No.
But they felt they did their bit, because they just came and sat there silently. And these people are very close to you, so it was like they sat and that was their job done. Like we've been there, we've done it, we've supported. And actually, you've not asked about it. Like, if we sat here and pulled all these people up and said, how did Arjun die? What happened? They don't know.
There'd be a lot of people that wouldn't be able to tell you.
They don't know. They have no idea, because they've not tried to find out. They went ghost. They didn't even. I mean, I got removed off social media from.
Yeah, you did.
A lot of these people. Yeah. So it was easier to remove us than to send condolences. Imagine that. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, your child has died," they were like, "Oh, I can't do this. Delete, unfollow." Never talk to this person again.
Yeah.
And strangely, when we've then come face to face with them later on at events or anything, they act like nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have I just missed something? Like, you've missed a massive chunk of my life. But this
is what I mean. Going back to that friend I was mentioning, like, they were supportive and they were there, which is why everything was warranted. But I even remember on a number of occasions we would meet, and I'd say, listen, just ask whatever you want. Right, and it was some of the questions that I wouldn't expect, but it's okay if you're there and you're turning up and you're involved. Good, you're going through that process with me, right? You can ask those questions. It's not like
better than silence.
Well,
right?
This is it, right? And so it's like when people are confused about what to do in these scenarios or afraid of asking the wrong questions, it depends on the context. If you're there to disappear because you're fearful, yet you've got these questions and you ask it in the wrong way, it's going to be anticipated in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But if you're there and you're turning up and you're available for that person who's grieving, ask the questions. Even if it's an uncomfortable question, it's not like we're nasty people who are going to take offense to what you've asked. No, if you're there, we'll talk to you about it. We'll show you our thinking. I will share my journey with you, and let's discuss it, right?
Yeah.
And at least have that as a starting point. And you know, we did this back and forth. And when he did it, he recently had a baby. And when he did, he reached out and he was like, "Oh my God, like, you know,
I get it.
I get it."
So many people have done this, don't you think?
He's one of them. Yeah, there's been a few other people that I haven't had that kind of interaction with, but they've tried to kind of U-turn
there's
back and say.
There's people who said their initial condolences, but they've come back years later and they're like, "Listen, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "But you know, that's fine. You've already sent your condolences." And they were like, "No, I didn't get it the way I do now."
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that.
100%.
I really do. We you know, the amount of times that people have come and done that, especially after they've had children.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm very welcoming to it because, you know, I don't want to penalise somebody for coming. Like, it's better late than never.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't know at the time, but you learnt your lesson, you grew, you took accountability, and you've apologised, and you've really taken accountability.
Yeah.
I remember one of your cousins, and I really admire her for this, but I think she didn't message for about 6 months because she was under the impression that she's not meant to reach out, because I think initially the family had spoken and they were a bit like, give them some space, and a lot of people took that very literally.
Yeah.
And she took it literally and was like, okay, they don't want to hear from anybody. And 6 months later, she came to see you and she just said, I don't know why I expected you to reach out to me first. Why would you reach out to me first? And she held her hands up and was like, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And then she made up for it after that, because without fail, every year we get a message on Arjun's birthday. Every time we post something about Arjun or mention him, she's one of the first to be like, you know, even sending a heart or even thinking of you. Something small like that. It just makes you feel heard.
100%.
You know, and I really appreciate it. And I remember when your ma passed away and I thought this was lovely. She came up to me after the funeral and was just like, that must have been really triggering and really traumatizing for you guys. Like, I hope you're okay.
I remember that.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like you
thought about it.
You thought about it. You really understand. And I just, you know.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. It's quite shocking what some people are capable of doing.
And to this day, there are people who still haven't messaged on his birthday, even though, again, we plaster it all over social media and it's, you know, it's there. But they don't. And I think that, here's the thing, if you've gone ghost on someone who's grieving and you want to make up for it, don't you think their birthday is the one date you should have kind of stapled to your head, like, let me make up for it? Or they've posted about him, let me message them, they're clearly missing him.
And this is a problem as well, because that's our thinking, although we would typically think that would come naturally, but I feel like this is where it kind of falls over, even when you're trying to mend certain relationships. Or if you know, when you start trying to discuss this openly, then it suddenly becomes like we're being too demanding because this is what we want, and it's not what we want in that sense. It's not, again, it's not like every conversation now needs to be about Arjun. Everything now needs to be about me being, me being traumatized or going through this trauma, and not every conversation needs to be about that. You can warrant and have normal conversations again and go back to normal, but it's almost like people feel like that can't be done. And so it becomes really difficult to then pick up those pieces. And I've always said, if it started with silence or absence and that came because someone was scared or fearful, even with the best intentions, if you go further down the line and then try and patch those things back together, it's very difficult. You've been away from that journey for so long, so don't leave the journey in the first place, right? Like, if there's no other reason than to be there, be there. and go through that journey. And in 6 months' time, when that person's mindset's slightly different or they're unraveling new things, you're there. It doesn't become awkward to then connect those dots up together, because when you're not there for whatever reason, it means you're not there. And you've left a griever to go through a whole journey without you. You can't then expect them to you can't expect to rejoin their journey 6 months down the line and slot back in and it'd be exactly the same. It's not,
because I mean, you know, after we lost Arjun, I was pregnant with Kinari by November time, and
that's right.
This is the wildest thing to me. I think what's funny is there was a specific group of people who I hadn't heard from since Arjun passed away. And I remember when word got out about my pregnancy with Kinari, which we were keeping very secret, actually. There's a lot of people who found out on the day she was born.
That's right.
And we weren't actually planning on telling anybody until she was born. And it came from a place of fear, because we'd made this big deal about Arjun and he died. And I didn't want to disappoint everybody, and I think I was just really scared, and I was too scared to say it out loud, and that's another episode, of course, and how fearful we were during that pregnancy, and how we struggled to kind of, you know, get through that pregnancy. It was frightening, but months later, when it did hit some people's ears, we were made to feel bad. We got a message saying, really disappointed that we don't know about, you didn't tell us about this pregnancy.
I remember that message.
And one specific line, and obviously it was a family member, and they said, did you forget blood is blood and family is family?
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought to myself, where was this energy when my son died?
Yeah.
Was that not blood is blood, family is family? I was like, you haven't sent me condolences. And here you are wanting to know about my daughter when you didn't acknowledge her brother. And to me, it was just like, well, do you care about this baby? Because you didn't care about Arjun. And I've reached out to you guys and you've not been there for us. You've disappeared. And it kind of made me laugh at the same time because I was just like, I wanted to make sense of this because I would feel embarrassed to send that. If I had not been there during the death of somebody, I would feel extremely entitled. And, you know, I just thought I didn't understand the mindset at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting one because there's obviously a lot of people that you will speak to and it gives them that kind of platform to kind of come back, which is great, and have those conversations. But there are some people, unfortunately, that you can tell until you're blue in the face, and it's not going to change. There's been a number of people, and again, like so, I've had a fair few friends that have kind of ghosted and disappeared, and still aren't there. For me, one of my best mates just didn't get it, and it's been a very difficult journey for me to come to terms with the fact that he's just not. And that there's nothing I can do now. Like I said, it's been so long.
The funny thing is, he actually came to see you.
Yeah, he did.
During that week, I think he felt I think again it was the same as the previous people we were speaking about. I think people think I went for a best final, that's my job done.
Yeah.
They didn't expect it to continue and carry on. They think that's it. I've been there. I was there for the best final. I messaged here and there before the funeral. So done.
Yeah.
That's it. And they forget to support afterwards or check in or not even that. I feel like a lot of people then didn't know what to do with you. And me, of course. And they actually fell off completely. I mean, most recently, one of your friends got married and there was nothing wrong. And you weren't invited. You were cut out completely because...
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I don't know why.
People just disappear because they don't know what to do with you. You're too different. Like maybe it's weird and
this is that goes back to my point where I think the conception is that I don't know. I'm guessing in that sense, but unfortunately these are the journeys that you have to go through alone, and it shouldn't be that way. It's not like I'm a different person. I have different views on a lot of things now. Like I said, I've lost that innocence. Doesn't mean that I'm not, still wanting to go out and have a good time in some circumstances. But there will be days where I'm not as happy as I might have been because I'm thinking about my son. Or, like I say, you're allowed those vulnerabilities. That's what makes you a human being, right?
Yeah.
You don't just have to be strong and turn out every single day and that happy Rick you knew is like completely gone. No, that's not true. I'm very different. But that's because of this trauma that we've had to go through. But that's life as well, As you get on with life, you change as well. So it leaves me kind of baffled in some circumstances still as to why it needed to end those way with some of those relationships. And I think this ties into something that you're gonna mention in a bit in terms of how we deal with that, or where you go from that. But that's something that still baffles me today. It's like, why does it need to get to that? Because I'm still open. I'm still available.
Yeah.
I've not drastically changed. My views have changed, but that shouldn't change a friendship.
Yeah.
The only thing that does, like I said, unfortunately, put detriment on it is having that much silence or absence. I don't feel like people fully understand what that does and the implications and the impact that silence and absence has, and it's something I feel incredibly strongly about and I talk about a lot because, as I say, silence is deafening.
Yeah. I feel like you're more likely to get help and support when there's almost a visual kind of physical pain or physical injury.
Yes.
I think people just thought I remember being out one day, actually. My gosh, I obviously I became extremely agoraphobic when I when I lost Arjun, and I didn't leave the house for a very long time. And I remember
I
went.
Was it what, a couple of months? I think it was.
I couldn't leave the house for. I'd get panic attacks, or I didn't feel great. So
I remember Cav trying to help with that. Do you remember? I think Cav was one of the.
She was trying to get me on to
go to the patio.
To go to the balcony in the patio, and I was just like, I don't like it here. Let's go inside.
I remember that.
She really tried to get me some fresh air, and I was just like, no. Yeah. And then I remember trying to get myself out, and I'd order stuff into shops to make myself. I have to go collect it. And my friend Anna, who's a psychologist, was like, "Don't do that. Like, you're gonna go into flight or fight, and you're going to mess it up more. Just take it a day at a time.
Yeah.
Go out your front door. Once you get there, the next day, take a little bit step further, but do not do what you're doing." She was like, "Absolutely not." But yeah, I remember when I finally got myself out, and I ran into somebody who wasn't a friend or anything, just an acquaintance, and that I've kind of almost semi grown up around. And she kind of looked me up and down, like checking, like, oh, she's almost like she's fine. But somebody said that to me. They ran into me and said, "Oh, you look fine." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, it's just, it was like, oh my God, like, so do I need to prove to you that I'm in pain?
This is it, yeah.
Like, we've spent a long time trying to convince people that grief is painful and losing our son is painful. And it's almost like we have to keep convincing people. And that's what's really tiring.
Yeah.
And that...
It's funny you say convincing people, because I know when the times that you're speaking of. And the funny thing is that the first reaction is to almost kind of say what we've said before, which is... they need to take you out of it. Like it's almost becomes like you're trying to convince them that that like this is real and this and that, and the first instinct is to be like, no, you shouldn't feel like this. And
they want to stick this giant plaster on you. Like there you go. It's the whole everything happens for a reason, and
yes.
Look for the silver lining, have another baby. And this is the thing, when we did have other children, it was very like, oh, you're cured. Like, perfect. Yeah. God's giving you more children, so you're fine. And it's like, no, because they are not that child. They're very different people.
Well, one we've had a lot is, you should focus on spending time with your girls, and
Oh my God. And this is the other thing. This is the other reason why I didn't want to tell anyone when I was pregnant with Kanari, because as soon as people found out, I got these long lectures of focus on this pregnancy, focus on this baby, and it's like, I already feel guilty, I already feel bad. Grief is not something I can control, but thank you very much for dishing that out to me. And I was doing much better before people found out I was pregnant, because it saved me from these horrible little snippets of advice that I really didn't need. It was a really, really tough time. Really tough time. So here's an interesting question, actually, because we were one of the first to have a baby out of all our friends. So we didn't know anyone who had gone through this kind of trauma or grief. I only knew about this because my parents had lost a child. So do you think that if one of our family members or friends had gone through this, do you feel like you would have been supportive? Because now that I think about it, I don't know if I would have done all the things that people did for us. I don't know if I would have got awkward, basically. I'd like to think not, because, the number one rule that I've always had in my mind is when someone's passed away, doesn't matter how close you are, you aren't, always send at least a message.
It's a really good question. I think, honestly, I'd have to say I don't know, but I know myself well enough to know what I do in certain situations, which is kind of what I use to kind of judge what should be okay or not, or what's kind of deemed as even the basic.
I'll tell you one thing, though. I would never, ever let go of a friend or a family member.
No, I wouldn't.
I would not let my awkwardness end our friendship completely.
No,
ever.
I can't believe that I'd be awkward in that way to not message. I mean, I would definitely message and reach out. It in terms of, again, this goes back to like turning up and what's actually enough, because it's not like we sit here demanding things from people every day, or you have to mention Urjan's name every day. It's not about that at all. And I know you've touched on it before, that just kind of saying where it's just it's in the things that people do, right? So we've got some friends that just go above and beyond constantly. I don't think I could live up to
What's
that.
What's above and beyond? Because for me, it's just remembering his birthday, or now and then mentioning him, or or referring to me as a mother of three at all times.
Yeah.
I have a handful of friends who constantly, not constantly, but they bring him up as and when they think of him.
Just in natural conversation.
Yeah.
And
that's all I need.
That's amazing, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it's not even
this
about...
is what I mean. It's not about...
extravagant gifts and anything to do with that.
No,
or,
exactly.
It is just casually bringing him up. Yeah. Like, people have joked, and we've been sitting there with, the girls, and they've been like, oh my God, Arjun would not stand for his sisters behaving this way. Yeah. Just silly things like that. I love it.
Yeah.
Just casually mentioning him. It's so wonderful. It's as simple as that.
Making it normal. Normalizing it. Normalizing the conversations. Right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to feel awkward about saying it. Yeah, that's exactly it. In terms of me personally, like I said, I know what I would do, but there are people that do a little bit more, and there are people that do way more.
Yeah.
And me knowing now what some people are capable of, I don't know if I would go to that extent, or if I could in that sense. But that's the different levels of how people are going to kind of turn up. I know what I would do initially. So the idea is there's so many levels of what you can do.
Yeah.
There's really no need for this silence and absence. Like if it's a friendship, or if it's a family relationship, and you're close before, like, why does that need to drift apart?
Why?
Right?
Yeah.
When a friendship naturally drifts apart, fine. You don't hear people sitting here thinking, or dwelling unnecessarily on a friendship that frizzles because of time.
Yeah.
Or some other reason. Like this happened because of a traumatic experience. Didn't mean that you needed to not be friends anymore, or that relationship need to be ghosted, or there's no reason for it.
Yeah.
If it's just based on that traumatic experience, that's when you need to be there for people.
I think it's hard to know what people want as well, because I know there's people who probably don't want to talk about their baby that much. Actually, there are people out there who have lost babies and would rather keep it to a minimum.
Yeah.
But I think you can talk to somebody and see what they're about, what they want. And me and you are very open about talking about Arjun.
Absolutely.
So I think it's not exactly a mystery.
Yeah.
But in early days, I understand why it's difficult, because you're trying to gauge. And I remember I have a friend who actually Googled what to say and what not to say, which I think it's so basic. But I mean, that's my number one advice. I think if you know someone who's lost a baby, just Google what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and it really doesn't have to be that complicated.
No, I don't think it does at all.
Just know your person and try to gauge, and maybe mention the baby and see how they react, and go off of that. Mainly, you're letting them speak, though, as you said earlier. It's about letting them speak and hearing them out, and you just agreeing and accepting them where they are, at what stage they are, and following that journey, like you said as well.
Yeah.
And just making that healing journey easy for them.
Yeah.
But I guess not to spark a debate, but I guess one thing I definitely want to talk about, where we're very different, is our take on maybe where we stand with our grief ghosters, because I think and I mean I admire you for this, but I can't maybe be as accepting of the people who have ghosted and abandoned us. I find it really hard, but you seem to have been able to disconnect, and when you see these people, you're able to. I mean, I'm civil with them as well. Like, I'm not saying I go out there guns blazing and start arguing.
No, absolutely. I was going to say you're extremely.
But I can't hang out with them unless I really, really have to. So I've only seen them at weddings and funerals so far, or if we've ended up being in the same place. But I have this checklist in my mind, and if you were present at the time when Arjun was in my life, I mean, if you're a new friend, then I don't have many expectations or whatever. But at that time, if you're in my life and you haven't acknowledged Arjun, I find it very difficult to allow these people in my life. How have you found it to forgive these people? Would you say you've forgiven them?
No, not completely. I think this is a really, really good topic and a very difficult one to answer. We are extremely different, but it's not. And I appreciate you say it's kind of commendable, but I don't actually know if it is that it's just a way that it's just a way that I've dealt with it. But going back to the grief initially, I was very quick to start trying to compartmentalize my feelings and emotions and kind of bucket them up, and that's what kind of helped with inviting people back and talking to them months later to kind of have that conversation. So it wasn't very much like you're cut off, right? I personally I find it extremely difficult to kind of cut people out in that way. Again, I'm not saying if that's healthy or unhealthy. I'm just saying I find it very difficult to cut people out.
Yeah.
However,
but I always say to you, I know what's coming, because I saw my parents do this.
Yeah.
My parents felt that pressure of, we're in this community and, this is a close family friend now, or this is a family member.
Yeah.
And they kept these people in their lives. Yeah. And again, another sad moment, period of grief came along somewhere down the line. And they ended up doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think I just learnt my lesson from that, a lot of people are just unwilling to learn their lesson and take accountability. And you know who these people are.
Yeah.
And, there's been other, I won't bore everybody with what's happened, but we've come face to face with a lot of these people, and we've been...
Yeah, we have.
disrespected yet again. I mean, I still get ignored. So I'm
there's one person. There's one person I'm thinking about at the moment, and we had that conversation, and it got to a point where there'd been so many chances or opportunities where I was just waiting for something. I knew I wasn't going to get it. It was almost just like, do you know what happened? Like, do you want to talk about it? Like, what's your stance? So that I can kind of make a decision. And off the back of that, I still didn't get what I want, and that's what I mean. It's very like that relationship will never go back to what it was, and that's very difficult to try and get your head around. But I think that's it's almost, I don't know. It's a really interesting topic. But I think me personally, like I said, someone either gets all of me, or they get the kind of basic level. It's not really like all or nothing.
But you're still present with them. So the thing with me is it's kind of like, I can't hang out with you because you probably think I'm okay with this, and I'm not. Like, you need to own up. Otherwise, I can't be around you, because that's what they want. They want you.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. They want you to move past it and be around them. They get comfort in knowing, well, he hung out with me.
Yeah.
So you might just be being civil, and in their head, they're like, oh, well, things are back to normal now, and it's fine. And it's like, I don't know. I can't do it. I have a checklist, and I'm just like, no, if you can't acknowledge my son, even that one time, and own up to where you went wrong, because like I said, I've told them, I've tried to have a discussion with them that this is where you've gone wrong, and they've not taken ownership of that. So to me, it's like, well, this is dead end. I can be civil to you. I can see you in the street and wish you well, and I genuinely can, but I am not going to let you be in my life. And especially, unfortunately, I can't let them be in my kid's life either, because to me, it's like, well, what if something else traumatic happens? What if one day something happens to me? Are you going to be there for my kid, or are you just going to feel awkward?
No, I agree, and I think this is why it's such an interesting but difficult idea, because I share all of those views, and I think you're absolutely right in having that stance, to be fair. And in a weird way, mine's kind of the same, in the sense that if you're a mate before and you've done this, then I'm no longer going to be calling you up to go for a beer, for example, and having a chat about my life. Like, that stopped, and it's not because it has to. It's just, that's just done. It's the natural kind of thing to do No, right? We're not going to go and get a beer together.
It won't be the same as
if before. I had to see you outside, okay.
But fine. Here's the funny thing: if they just took accountability, owned up, apologized, and just different. It would potentially be a new start, a new relationship. It could potentially go back.
Yeah. And it has for one as well. There's actually a whole.
That's going to be it. There's going to be an episode on that guy. Absolutely.
Well, I'm hoping actually at some point we can get that guy on.
Yes.
But there's someone that we've got in mind that we're talking about there. And they literally full reverse, right? And closer than ever right now.
Oh, they won you right back. They did not let you go.
100%.
Or you or me, yeah. Which I really, I can't wait for that one. That's going to be really that's a big one. But
definitely.
Secondary loss, I think it's a juicy topic, and I'm sure we're going to definitely be coming back to it because it's not one episode is definitely not enough on secondary loss.
To be fair, I thought it might, but even going through this and even having stalled in a couple of areas because I've had to kind of second guess some decisions or whatever. Like I think we definitely need to come back to it and explore it.
It's a juicy one. It's a big one, and but I guess thank you everyone again so much for joining us for the second episode. We'll definitely be back with more on secondary loss for sure. But thank you everyone.
Yeah, thanks all.